Welcome to another video in this series on king hunts, hunting the opponent's king down. Now, we all enjoy a good king hunt. It's one of the most beautiful things we can do in chess, to chase our opponent's king around the board and finally get it into a checkmate net. And in this series on 5 games, might be more if you find it popular, we're going to look at strategies that you can use in order to make king hunt successful and little tips about attacking chess along the way. Now, the first thing I should say, which I've said nearly in every video so far in this series, but I just want to reinforce the point, is that king hunts don't happen out of thin air. They normally happen for a number of reasons, so you can't just go and create a masterpiece every day of your life. We're not Van Gogh here or some great artist. We're chess players after all. We can try, but it'll probably backfire that way. So for a king hunter or successful attack to be successful, it has to be down to a couple of things. Mainly the accumulation of lots of small advantages, so better development. Our opponent might have a weakened king, which we see. He might be behind in development. So you have to keep your eyes open for the possibility to strike. And then, when the possibility is there, we strike with power. So let's have a look at this game now between two great players. We have Topalov with the white pieces, and we're looking at this from the side of Barayev from the black side. And the game starts off as a French defense. And now the opening starts fairly normally. Now there's 2 ways you can play against knight c3. Bishop b4 is the winner variation, but the classical variation is with knight to f6, which is actually more popular nowadays at this level. And I recommend this in the series. Bishop g5, pinning the knight, and now pawn takes e4. The knight takes on e4. We break the pin on a knight on f6, and now white decides to take on f6 with his bishop, so he keeps his strong knight in the centre of the board. Now, in my video series, I recommend taking with a pawn here, which is extremely interesting. Now, bishop takes is a very solid line. White just goes c3, and we'll go for a couple more moves. Knight d7, queen c2, and now e5. A very good move here, striking in the centre of the board. Queen c2, in actual fact, is the start of a bad plan from white. And like I said before, when you're trying to attack, you have to be aware of the warning signs. So if your opponent is not concentrating on developing his pieces, his minor pieces, which Topalov is not doing here, look at his poor old knight and his poor old bishop, they're not getting developed here. And if his king is still lurking in the centre, then it's a very good idea to open up the position. And e5 gives black a break in the centre. It allows black's pieces to come to life somewhat. So white now captured on e5. Again, I think this is a slight error. The only logical way for white to play this would be to castle queenside. This makes a little bit of sense of white's plan, and then a very interesting game would take place. But instead, white took on e5. Now knight takes e5. And one of the reasons black broke with e5, black was thinking about liberating all of his minor pieces. Another thing you must do when you're playing your own games. You have to think about the possible future of all your pieces. Think about your pieces as your kids, you know. You want your kids to have a good education, to go to a good school, and to get a good job. You don't want to be stuck in the gutter with nowhere to go. And this is the same with your pieces. And now the bishop on c8 has a great future flying out over here. And now white played f4. Again, the warning signs should be going here, because white is breaking with a pawn, but his king is still in the centre. We can castle with black very quickly. White takes a long time to castle, and he's playing this move here, which does weaken some dark squares. So very risky play from Topalov. Knight g6 played, attacking the pawn on f4. White defends this pawn, and now we castle, of course. So we've played very logically with the black side so far. We've castled, we've developed some pieces, and after bishop to d3, we can now think about how to continue in aggressive mode. Now, this is one thing that really sets out weaker players from stronger players. Stronger players can sense when it is time to go on the attack. And here, you should sense it from the black side because of the white king and because white's a bit overextended. So have a little think about this position here and consider some of your options. Now, given a chance, white will castle queenside next move. That's why he placed his bishop on d3 to block the queen's route, stopping the castling. Or maybe white will simply move his knight on g1 and castle kingside. But the main thing we want to stop, we always have to think of our opponent's ideas, even when attacking, is he wants to castle queenside. So how can we try to cut across that idea? Have a little think now. And like I said before, I'm going to ask you to pause this video at certain stages, but you can pause it now if you want to. Well, very good move now. Queen to d5. And this activates the queen, but most importantly, if white now castles, we can at least grab a pawn on a2, which should be quite nice for us. So it cuts across this castling idea. It puts a little bit of pressure on the knight. We're not too worried about white taking on f6 because then white's going to have serious problems about his rook and he's opened up the e-file. So another little thing, when you're attacking, positional things don't matter so much. So don't worry positionally about double pawns or a bad structure. These things are not so important. Checkmate is the end of the game. And that's what we need to do when attacking, just simply checkmate. So now white continued here with a3. Far too slow. Again, not paying attention to the dangers in the position. White now had to contend with this very nice move of knight takes f4. A real bolt from the blue, this move. And the idea of this, well, have a think. Why do you think black did this move, knight takes f4? What was his plan? And this shows great awareness from Barayev. He's taken his chance. He's playing with great energy. Every move he's going forwards, every move he's attacking. And when you do turn on the attack button, you need to play with great energy. Well, the first idea behind this lovely move is that if white captures on f4, he's opened up this diagonal, the h4, e1 diagonal towards his king. So we can now continue with a check, and after something like king to f1, we simply attack the knight on e4 again, pawn to f5. And the issue here is that if the knight moves, the rook is going to drop, and our simple plan for black is to take the knight, open up the f-file towards white's king. So we're going to get our piece back with an attack still raging here. So in this position, instead of taking on f4, Topalov decided to take on f6 with check to get rid of this dangerous bishop. Of course, we took back, and now again the rook is on pre, so you have to do something about this. You can't take the knight now. So Topalov took on h7 with check, king to g7, and now queen to e4. Okay, so this is a major point in the game, and black's next move is simply fantastic. It's an amazing move. And again, it goes back to this principle of playing with energy. The white king is exposed. Materialistically, it doesn't matter so much. You've got to keep the attack going. How can you keep the attack going now? Now, you don't want to swap queens here, surely, because then it becomes easier for white to defend. So have a good think about this position. Put yourself in black's shoes. Very hard move to see, but have a go and pause the video now. Well, black now played the beautiful move, rook to e8. A simply astonishing way to try to sacrifice two rooks to avoid the exchange of queens and develop the bishop on c8 with tempo. A little tip when you're attacking, how many pieces do you generally need attacking to make a successful attack? The magic number is 3. You need 3 pieces. Now, the idea is this bishop will come into the game and you'll have the knight, queen, and bishop attacking. The magic number. Now, white is pretty much forced to capture on e8. And now we see the point behind black's idea. Can you see the point now? I'll let you just give you a moment, because you've just given up a rook. What was Barayev's beautiful idea here? Again, pause the video in a second, not yet, but remember, play with energy. Forwards, forwards, forwards. calculate checks, but if the checks don't get you anywhere, I have this certain rule: if you can't crash bang wallop, then you bring the reinforcements in. So think about that and pause the video now. Well, like the romantic games of the last century, Black now brought a bishop into the game, bishop to f5. Beautiful. Leaving another rook on pre, but what does this move do? Well, number one, White's bishop on d3 was covering some quite important squares. It was stopping a knight coming to d3, check. It was stopping a queen ever coming to d3. So you're developing a piece, but you're also blocking one of your opponent's pieces. Now, White really has to take this rook, otherwise he's going to end up in all sorts of trouble anyway, because we're simply going to, let's say, queen e7 here. If he refuses to take the rook, well, we simply check on d3, and we can just take on h7. And again, this rook on h1 will drop. We're even going to be material up here. So we are forcing White now to capture our rook on a8. And this leads us to a very complex position here where you have a number of moves to play. And again, this is the kind of situation a weaker player might go wrong in. He might rush and play the first move without properly calculating. When you're playing chess, when you're involved in a complicated situation like this, you really have to play variations which you've calculated to a concrete conclusion, because you have to make sure you're going down the line that's beneficial to you. So here you have a number of checks. Try to now calculate all these checks. And this little tip I gave you before, when you're trying to calculate, if you can't figure out the whole sequence because it's too complicated, just try to calculate as many checks as you can. What would you play here with Black? Pause the video now. Well, the best check here is queen to e4 check. This allows the queen to shoot into a good square next, and White has to be very careful where he moves the king. For example, in the game, he went king to f2. What else could he have played here? Well, let's have a look at the lines one by one. If king d2, there's a lovely variation starting with queen g2 check. Now, where does the king move to? Well, if it goes up the board, then we check it, knight d5 check, and if king d4, queen d2 check, and this king is going to be hunted down. Try to work out how you can get to checkmate from this position. So again, pause the video here. Now, what else can White do? Well, if he goes backwards, let's say king e1, then we can come in with knight d3 check and this bishop g4 check. Checkmate next move. And you can see how the blocking of our opponent's defensive pieces allowed our knight to get to d3 in this variation. So even when you're attacking, you have to try to limit the activity of your opponent's pieces to have a successful attack. And where else can the king go? Well, there's not really many other places it can go to. So this is really one good variation. So here, White decided to go to f2. Now, we could have a quick look if he goes to d1 here. What would have been played there? So king d1. Well, here, can you see how we checkmate here? Should be able to work it out. It's checkmate quite soon. Have a go at yourself. Pause the video now. Queen c2 check, king e1, checkmate in two moves. Can you see it? Knight d3 check, and eventually queen f2 checkmate. See, 3 is the magic number. And the combination of queen and knight attacking is one of the most dangerous combinations in chess. Worth remembering that. Let's go on with the game. King f2 played, and now queen to g2 check. King to e3, knight d5 check, and we get to this position, which I asked you to have a look at earlier on. Now, the reason I said that is because this is what occurred in the game. Now, worth pointing out here that the white king only really has one square to go to, because if it goes to c4, we can actually go knight b6 check, and we're going to pick up the queen and keep our attack raging. So this would clearly be winning. Well, it's probably even going to be mate here. You can try to work out mate if you want to in this position. So really, after queen d2 check, the king has to go to c5. And here, well, very complicated, but beautiful attacking. Remember, when you're attacking, the golden rule, look for all checks and captures, look for the crash bang wallop. If it's not there, look at bringing in reinforcements, but through a series of checks, you can actually checkmate here. Queen e3 check is the key. King to c4, pretty much forced. If we take on d5, it's checkmate in one move. I'm not even going to tell you the answer to that. And what else can be played here? Well, if king b5, then we slowly move in for the kill. Queen to b6 check. And if king c4, it's checkmate in one move. Again, pause the video if you need to. Let's test your tactical skills. And if the king goes to this square, well, this looks awfully risky. Checkmate in one move again. Not going to tell you the answer. Have a look for yourself. So it's clear to see after queen e3 check, there was only one way to try and escape this one. And that was king to c4. But now knight to b6 check. And in actual fact, white resigned here because it's going to be checkmate very soon. Let's just have a look at some of the variations. So if king to b3 here, how do we checkmate in this position? Well, our bishop does a great job of cutting the king off, so we don't need to move the bishop. Instead, queen to e6 check. And after something like king b4, queen c4 check, king a5, queen a4, checkmate. And I'll let you work out the other checkmates there yourself. You've got to test yourself. So try to work out what happened if the king moved to the other squares in this position. So a very beautiful game there from Barayev. But what were the key points there that we can take away? Well, the first key point is actually the opening. You don't have to play crazy romantic openings to get crazy romantic games in chess. In actual fact, you can play quiet openings like Black did here. This is actually a very solid opening. But then when your opponent starts to play rather strange moves, if you ever see that, like queen c2 and later on this move f4, the alarm bell should be ringing and you should always think, how can I take advantage of these strange moves and try to pounce on them? And when you do get the attack going, as Black did here in beautiful fashion, we had this amazing combination of rook e8, simply stunning. And this is trying to get all the black pieces into the game after bishop f5 with speed. And the reason this works, you have the magic number 3 pieces against the lone king. White's not going to survive, but of course, calculation is key. So to do romantic games, you don't always need to work from the opening, but you do need to build up this foundation. You do need to develop your pieces soundly, and often you need some mistakes from your opponents. But hopefully you enjoyed that game. It's one of my favourite games in the French defence of all time. Simply stunning attack with some beautiful moves there. And we have one more game in this video series to look at. So thank you very much for watching. Please leave your comments below and I'll be back with you very soon.